And welcome to Reuters events. I'm being joined now with Fatih Birol, the head of the International Energy Agency. Fatih, great to see you. Thanks for joining us today. Yeah, I would really like to start by asking you about your latest report, the Net Zero report, which made so many waves. So tell us a little bit about how the report was born and how the message sort of evolved over the past 5 years, because we remember very well the IEA talking about the golden age of gas, and the IEA welcomed shale oil, and now we have this, really groundbreaking report, I would say, the Net Zero report, which essentially calls on countries to stop new oil and gas production. Give us a bit of flavor how the message changed over the years and what brought you to the conclusion.
Of course, it is good to have such opportunities to tell the colleagues, share with the colleagues and the friends what we are doing, what we are up to, what is the our motivation. You just mentioned the golden age of gas. It is. I think, as far as I remember, 10 years ago, we made this study. In fact, the exact title was, I remember very well, "Are we entering a golden age of gas?" A question mark. And in that report, at that time, the global gas consumption was about 3,000 BCM. And we said, if the world to see a golden age of gas, in the next 10 years, around 2020, this will come around 4,000 BCM, 1,000 BCM growth. And today, if you look at the numbers, we are spot on. Today, global gas consumption is 4,000 BCM. And many people, when we made this report, they said we are exaggerating the role of gas. And we said, if those things happen, especially in the United States, the shale gas revolution, this is the result. Our aim is here, Dimitri, gas, renewables, clean energy, fossil fuels, our aim is to make the world understand what are the drivers of the global energy markets and where the markets go. And today, again, as you mentioned, 2 weeks ago, we made this report, the Net Zero to 2050. The reason why we did it is very simple. Several governments around the world, US, EU, UK, China, Japan, Korea, Brazil, many countries, many governments at a leaders level made commitments to bring their energy system to net zero by 2050, a commitment. And this is more than 70% of the global economy. And we said, okay, how do you translate this commitments to energy sector? What needs to happen in the energy sector so that the government's commitments are fulfilled? So, and when we look at the numbers, it is our job at the IEA. We see a growing and widening gap between the rhetoric and what is happening in the real life. Let me give you one example. I mentioned so many governments are coming up with this net zero commitments in 2050. And in the same year, CO2 emissions are growing substantially, and according to our numbers, it will be the second largest increase in the history this year. But these two are happening at the same time. Big momentum, commitments, and the data shows different. So therefore, we made this report, and we have over 400, as we call it, milestones. What needs to happen to reach those targets? For example, the car sales, by 2030, no more internal combustion engine cars sold. Or 2040, 50% of the aviation fuels need to come from synthetic fuels, alternatives to oil. If those demand side policies are implemented, we say there will not be a need for investments for new oil fields. The driver is the demand side. If those demand side measures are implemented to bring the emissions to net zero, then you don't need to this new investment for oil. We still need investments in the existing fields which are under development, which are already approved, but there will not be a need for oil investments. How the report is perceived, and we are overwhelmed. As everybody knows, our normal audience is the energy world, but the climate finance world, the energy industry, technology companies, civil society, we are overwhelmed, and we are getting from one country followed by the other to build their net zero roadmap together with the IEA. So
it's interesting that you are mentioning the demand side.
Message that we see, that we don't say that this is what we come up is the pathway. It is a pathway. There may be different, of course, pathways to reach that.
Sure. But it's interesting that you are mentioning the demand side. People indeed prefer to focus on production and what needs to happen to production. But indeed, as you said, this is the demand side which is driving things. So if the world was to stick to low carbon targets, give me a taste of how the world would look like by, say, 2040 or 2050. What's going to happen to travel? I mean, in my view, travel needs to stop. People shouldn't travel anymore if we want to bring carbon down. I mean, strawberry shouldn't be sold in shops. I mean, strawberry from Argentina should never be sold in shops in England in winter. But I don't think consumers really realize what steps they are required to do to really help the world achieve low carbon targets. Give us a taste of how it will look like.
Of course. First of all, you are completely right. We have over 400 such milestones, what needs to happen and when it needs to happen. And almost 95% of those milestones are demand driven to reach the emissions. Now, consumer behavior has to change as well. But how does the consumer behavior change? It is as a result of government efforts, incentives, disincentives, and others. Travel, you mentioned, air travel. What needs to happen? Just basically two things here. One, today, 99.5% of the air travel, the jets, are fueled by the oil products. In 2040, the half of the, if we want to stick to our targets, net zero targets, half of the fuel for jets need to come from the alternative to oil. It can be advanced biofuels, the synthetic fuels, ammonia, among others. This is one. Second, is, for example, France, where we live, French government is doing, and some other governments, they are going to put big disincentives and sometimes bans for short distance traveling by plane. And they are substituting with these trains and other public transport means. So there are different ways in terms of technology solutions, in terms of market-based solutions, and in terms of providing incentives, regulations to the citizens. The main thing is here, Dimitri, when we look at the entire solution here, I see two major categories of the solution. First, especially in the next 10 years, make the most of the existing available technologies, such as solar, wind, hydropower, energy efficiency, electric cars, in some countries, nuclear power. They're already here. This is the big part of the answer. But there is a second one, which is as important as this one, is that we have to push the button for the technologies which are under development, but not yet in the market, such as the advanced battery technology, such as hydrogen applications. There are many, or carbon capture family, there are many technologies we need to solve this problem. Renewables alone will not solve the problem, but they will have the lion's share of the solution.
So we've seen this week, Dr. Birol, oil rising above $70 per barrel, and just a couple of days ago, Goldman Sachs said that oil could rise to 100. I mean, how concerned are you that underinvestment will might not only create a big deficit in the short term, but maybe we will live with this deficit for the mid and probably even the long term, because companies such as Shell and BP are not investing enough in oil production anymore, under pressure from investors?
Definitely, there is a lot of pressure on the international oil companies, so-called majors there. And two things there. First of all, those companies need to be, of course, under pressure in quote, in order to improve their performance, environmental performance. This is good, but it is not enough. They are responsible less than 10% of the global oil reserves, and a big chunk of other companies in Asia, in the Middle East, in the other countries. So this should be a global solution. This is number one. Number two, if the demand side developments don't happen, big push for electric cars, again, aviation and others replacing oil, and if there is not enough investments going on, this will definitely lead to volatility, and which is not a good news for anybody in the world. And therefore, one of the reasons why we make this study is that we need an orderly transition to clean energy. I should tell you something. I don't know which company is going to do what, and what are their plans, national companies, international ones, but no company will be unaffected from clean energy transitions. That I can assure you.
Right. There have been a number of countries within the IEA which haven't publicly endorsed the new net zero strategy, and there have been a number of countries which actually disagreed with the strategy. They were quite annoyed by it. So what's your message to them, and why such a discrepancy?
So I have not seen any country which is, as you call it, annoyed. There are countries that they have different ways to do that. But I can tell you that one good example is the only 2 days ago, there was a G7 leaders summit in UK, and all 7 countries are the members of the leading members of the IEA. They have in their communique officially endorsed IEA's net zero roadmap, saying that IEA provided a clear roadmap for the world. And the others, of course, many others have endorsed our work. Some countries say we don't want to take this technology, but the other technology, it is up to them. We never say that this is the pathway. We say this is a pathway, depending on the countries. But I can tell you that the overwhelming number of governments around the world know what the direction is, and how quickly we reach those targets, which technologies they choose, it is up to them. Nobody can resist to this transition. It may be slower, it may be faster in some countries, but the direction is extremely clear when you look at the trends around the world. Just give you one number. Last year, more than 90% of all power plants came into grid were renewable energies, more than 90%. And this will continue. Electric cars are growing, and this will come one after another. And as I see, there is a incredible political momentum. Whether or not this political momentum immediately turn into changes, radical changes in the market, this is another story altogether. But as I said, clean energy transitions are coming very strongly. It is better, in my view, for all the countries, producing countries, consuming countries, north, south, to take their economic and energy positions accordingly.
Speaking of non-IEA members, but though very important consumers such as China and India, I've heard voices of observers and people from within who have said that this latest strategy, it was so much kind of oriented towards industrialized nations that developing countries such as India and China, they clearly couldn't have approved anything like this. And the split between sort of the developed world and the developing world has only increased as the result of this latest report. What would be your message to the associated members such as China and India?
You are right. They are also members of the IEA family: China, India, Indonesia, Brazil, South Africa. So first of all, I don't know who those observers are you are talking to, but the Chinese government also officially, President Xi last September committed China to a net zero by 2060. Indian government is writing history in terms of the clean energy. But one thing is clear. We also published a report 2 weeks ago together with the World Bank and World Economic Forum. What we see, and in my view, the fault line of this reaching climate targets is clean energy investment financing in emerging world. Because if you look at our numbers, more than 90% of the growth in emissions come from the emerging world, and only 1/5 of the clean energy investments are going in those countries. So without accelerating substantially the flow of capital for clean energy investments in those countries, the chances of reaching our global climate targets will be very little, if at all any. So therefore, there is a job for the international financial institutions, industrious countries, together with the emerging countries, those host countries, to find ways to finance clean energy investments there. Because even for the, I don't know if you are in UK now, are you in UK? Are you in London? Okay. Even in the UK, tomorrow, London, UK, tomorrow, the emissions would come to zero. Forget this small increase or sharp, small zero. If the emissions from Jakarta or from Detroit or from Stockholm or from Paris don't go down, the impact of climate change in London will not change.
That's my point. That's
emissions,
my point, Dr.
emissions going to atmosphere from Jakarta or from Detroit or from Liverpool, from Lille, it has the same effect on everybody. Emissions don't have a passport. So this is a race to zero, but it's such a race that unless everybody finishes the race, nobody wins the race. So it is the reason why we are bringing asking for international collaboration.
That's a lot of people are making this point, actually, Dr. Birol, that there's a lot of talk in the West. I mean, there's a lot of comparison between oil and the tobacco industry, right? In the past 10 years, people have compared it a lot. But if you look at the tobacco industry, there's a lot of talk how the West sort of has managed to reduce smoking, but all smoking migrated to Asia. I mean, Asia is now consuming more cigarettes than the world was consuming in 1990. I mean, it has massively increased. Is there a same risk with climate change? When kind of all demand and everything, it just goes to Asia and the West declares a victory on emissions, but nothing changes essentially.
So first about the tobacco industry is to be, I don't want to make any remarks that not have double standards in my life. Just to move to the other issue, I mean, the oil or coal, for that sake, if we are not able to reduce the coal consumption, for example, in Asia, whatever we do in UK or US will have no meaning. So therefore, we should, this is the problem or the tragedy of the entire economic challenge we are facing. We need everybody to be part of the solution, but if we have a climate change, it will not be only UK affected from that. It is also Africa, it is China, it is India. They will have also very bad serious effects of climate change here.
So what's the solution here? China and India will simply say, just to finish my thought, China and India will simply say, the West is trying to undercut our economic development and we're not going to do it. So what's the solution?
I don't agree that the economic development is equal to fossil fuels. I think the clean energy technologies may well be the driver of the next economic growth there. And it is even worse, if you stick to the current energy industry, you may well be behind the curve and you may not be able to catch the next wave of modern economy. It is growing. Electric cars are coming, new energy technologies are coming, hydrogen is coming, efficient energy technologies are coming, and renewables are coming very, very strongly. So, and I believe we should all note that the China, for example, you mentioned, is the country which is the leader in different renewable energy technologies. China is the leader in terms of electric car technologies. India writing history one after another in terms of solar penetration. So the world is changing, and I think it is time for the energy industry to take note of this and to take note, as I always say, a new global energy system is emerging in front of our eyes. We need to take note of that, even if we don't want to be part of it.
All right. Well, that was a very strong message, Dr. Birol. Thank you so much for your time.
Very much.
And thank you for answering our questions. It's a pleasure to have you at our event. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.